Welcome to the L36 podcast, where the global exploration of cultural insights and stories of people making a difference big and small becomes this shift in perspective that helps us grow. I'm your host, Stephen Pearce, founder of L36, with my co-host Nina Winstead. And today we are speaking with Dr. Jordan Litman, an esteemed researcher whose groundbreaking studies on curiosity have revealed essential insights into human motivation, learning, and fulfillment.
Everyone experienced this kind of, I've got to know this. The very fact that you're kept on cliffhangers is based on this principle of, I've invested in this story.
Dr. Litman distinguishes curiosity into two compelling types, one that captures our sense of playful wonder, and another that drives deep investigation and meaningful achievement. Today, he'll illuminate how fostering both forms of curiosity can profoundly enrich our personal growth, education, and broader societal development.
Okay, so welcome, Dr. Jordan Litman. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to speak to you. You know, one of our pillars at L36 is original innocence, and that has brought us to the topic of curiosity. You know, what is that beginner's mind? How do we first enter this world with just this wonder, sense of wonder, this childlike sense of wonder? And that brought us to exploring curiosity and to you. And it seems as though through your research, you've found that there are actually two types of curiosity. One that is linked more towards that feeling of wonder, and another that is linked more towards achievement and action. Can you tell us about those things? Because I think all of us would like some more wonder and some achievement in our lives.
I certainly would.
Certainly. So I, in my research, what I've found is that there are two very broad, you might think of them as higher order dimensions, sort of big overarching ideas about curiosity, and importantly, big overarching ways in which we experience and express it. And the way that I've talked about it typically is to differentiate between what I call I-type curiosity. I think that term has finally caught on a bit, referring to curiosity as a feeling of interest. And this is what you're describing, the sort of open wonder experience. And I think that's very important. It's very critical to trying new things. It's very important being open to new ideas. It's very important to surveying all the different things out in the world that might come before you of potential value. It's a lot of survey and play, I would say. And I think that's critical. But I think there is another aspect of curiosity that seems to be get a lot less attention. And that is I refer to as deprivation type or D-type curiosity, or the longer form curiosity, the feeling of deprivation. And the basic idea here is that when we experience moments of uncertainty, when we're trying to understand something, where there are key pieces missing in order to put it together, solving a problem, working out a puzzle, trying to make sense of a complex array of information that has to be connected, collect and connect data, that sort of idea. We find that that's a very different kind of motive. We find that that motive is not wide-eyed wonder. Wide-eyed wonder is incredibly important. You guys acknowledge the importance of it as well. Certainly critical to learning. But when we think of wide-eyed wonder, and when we think of children, which I want to come back to, we think of curious people. We think of children sort of running around a field or checking out a museum or just wandering around a park and looking at things, all the different things they can look at. And that is wonderful and exciting. My follow-up question is, are not scientists curious? Are not teachers and educators curious? We sort of presume they just have all the knowledge, so what are they asking? But that's not true. To be a teacher, to be an educator, you are devoted to making sense of things you don't know, putting the pieces together, solving the puzzle. Arguably, detectives do this sort of thing as well. And we don't generally, I think of this in culture as elements of curiosity. The idea that we might consider curiosity as both this overwhelming sense of joy, carefree excitement and exploration, but that there is also a moment once we've found something that captures our attention to dig in deeply, identify what are the pieces we don't know, learn about it at a deeper level. That's what D-type curiosity is all about. Moreover, we find evidence of this. I'd mentioned children. We find evidence of these expressions of I and D-type inquisitiveness in children as young as 3. Based on parents' reports, parents' observations, we find that children demonstrate both open wonder. Let's check this out. Let's try that. Let's learn new things. What's this? Which involves a lot of, like I said, trying different things, and maybe none of it really holds your attention for very long, but you try lots of different things. D-type is about, once I found that something, that's my new interest. That's my new pervasive focus. I will learn more about this. I will dig into this. I will figure this out. We find evidence developing in children, like I said, as young as 3. We also have some really fascinating preliminary research looking at facial expressions in infants as young as 8, 9 months old. In infants 8, 9 months old, when we study reactions to sensory intellectual stimulations, very, very basic stuff. Look at a picture of a pattern or a picture of a face, things like that. Really, really simple stuff. We're talking infants. We have facial expressions that show 2, actually several, but the 2 that are most different, when I think in classes of expressions. One is this wide-eyed, oh, what's that? Eyes wide, mouth wide in babies.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another one too. Eyes squinted, mouth narrowed. What is that? I need to figure that out. In infants. So the ways in which we respond to the unknown, both wide open and dig deep, are critical. I feel the wide open has gotten maybe a little too much attention. The dig deep somehow has been overlooked. And I feel like that is especially critical because with that, you are determined to learn. You are not merely switching from, alternating from interesting thing to interesting thing. That's beautiful for advertisers. Beautiful to be open to trying new things, checking things out. But from a scholarship standpoint, to disregard the digging in deeply, solving the problem, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on that note, we might also consider this in terms of educational practices. So children in a classroom who aren't asking enough questions or whatever, they need to be encouraged. The nature of the question, the nature of the way they express it may be different. Kids who are just open to trying new things versus one who's isolating and focusing on a unique and specific topic, maybe that kid's not getting as much attention. There needs to be an opportunity to understand that people respond to new information in at least 2 big ways. One is, let me try everything. The other is, let me dive deep and maybe even set aside other things for a moment to focus on this.
I love the way that, and I don't want to breeze over the way that you've really summed those 2 up. Is one is survey and play. The open wonders like a little rhyme you've created for us, so I can learn it. Survey and play, wide-eyed, open mouth kind of wonder. And the other is collect and
connect. So let's say this is
connect. Okay.
So let me give you an example. I don't know how many people that we're talking to at the moment are watching this like nature documentaries, but nature documentaries are fun and they offer 2 kinds of opportunities to learn. On the one hand, they're a broad survey of all the different things in nature. Look at all these birds, these swimming creatures, these other mammals that run around, where they mate, who they hunt. That's all quite fascinating. But what will be also interesting and worth considering are when you zero in on a specific species, a specific pattern of doing things. That, I think, tends to get overlooked. That tends, for whatever reason, to be presumed to be sort of the purview of scientists, hard scholars. Mm-hmm. Not at all. Everyone experienced this kind of, I've got to know this. Mm-hmm. You miss a phone call. Okay, maybe there was something important. Not a perfect example. There's a series you're interested in. The very fact that you're kept on cliffhangers is based on this principle of, I'm invested in this story. I need to know how this comes together. I need to put the pieces together. It's not merely just capturing the novel each time.
Yeah. I do think we associate that like playful element so much with kids, but I also noticed that now that I'm a mom, I notice the dig deep, the intensity, because once our daughters zone in on something, if we take that thing away or interrupt that while they're in this have to know stage, it is like the end of the world.
Yes. Yeah. And on that note, what we find in the lab, and I don't know that I don't expect this to deviate much from people's own experiences. When you experience I-type curiosity, and I-type and D-type are correlated. I don't want to suggest they're completely different animals. You go back and forth between these things in real time. Mm-hmm. You see something new, it catches your attention. Then there's something else new, and wait a minute, there's pieces about that I don't understanding to put together. So you go back and forth in real time, but they orient our behaviors quite differently.
Well, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because is it just we associate that with the open wonder element to children, but they actually possess both very strongly initially.
Absolutely. And indeed, we see evidence of this in their facial expressions as early as a few months. And I think that it's critical to cultivate that. To think of children as both little explorers and little scientists is very apt. And
also very cute.
Cute, but think about this in terms of applications. Classrooms either give kids chance to sort of try everything, which is nice, or they give you sort of pre-canned labs and something in the middle where you can both explore and discover your own guided, in-depth investigations of topics. I think would also be nice. A nice way to support these kinds of things in children.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that is the default. I don't know that it is. I've been in grade school in a long time. But certainly teaching older kids, and when I talk about this, I try to encourage those kinds of ideas that, yes, your kids are not just trying everything new, and yes, they should be allowed to try and explore and create environments where they can ask questions, where they can be uncertain. But yes, as you've noticed, they will start to identify unique topics that are like puzzles, and it becomes distracting. So, important point here, D-type is a stronger motivation to learn.
Yeah.
I-type can be replaced because if something new and potentially interesting, the idea is, I don't know what that is, but what I can put together is that when I gain this information, it will hold my interest, it will hold my sustained attention. That's different from D-type, where you're sort of, this is already important. Now I need to put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
Cultivating both in children, I think, is critical. Absolutely critical. And I worry that we worry too much about utilitarian value of knowledge, know this to pass a test, or if you're going to explore, it's just for fun.
Yeah.
Why can we not both allow exploration for fun and for in-depth science? Why is that not encouraged earlier? I think it needs to be.
Yeah. Well, why do you think it's not encouraged? Like, where's the gap there?
Well, I think a couple things. I think that we don't always create environments where children can just ask questions openly.
Yeah.
That there's a certain degree of restriction built in where, and in fact, on that note, let me offer a counterpoint. Let me offer two counterpoints to everything about curiosity is wonderful. I think it is, but I'll play devil's advocate for a moment.
Yeah.
Curiosity is recognized in society as being potentially bad if you're nosy. Asking questions that you are not allowed to ask. Some questions simply are not appropriate to present for reasons or another. Yeah. Sometimes those are reasonable things like, well, that's too personal a question that might offend someone. A lot of times it's simply questions that are not simply acceptable to ask publicly.
Yeah.
Creating an environment where we can explore ideas, both new to consider and perhaps follow or move on, the I-type model, or to consider more deeply, solve, resolve, incorporate in what else we know, form deeper knowledge networks. All of that provides an environment where that is encouraged. You can ask tough questions. You can ask questions where maybe it's even hard to answer it. In fact, one of the key differences I'd say between I and D-type is that I-type experiences involve enjoying mystery. You don't need to know what the answer is. It's fun to wonder. D-type, it's not fun to wonder. You want the answer.
Yeah.
On that note, there is and I wouldn't say that I'm opposed to this. I describe myself as a positive psychologist, but I think a lot of positive psychology, again, sort of ignores some of this overcoming challenge, overcoming difficulty. If I don't get the answer, it's going to bother me. That implies some negative affectivity, and we find that D-type curiosity is correlated with some negative affectivity. It's not just, oh, what fun. It's, I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
When I do figure it out, what a payoff.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And you might think of this as an appetite problem. If you're not particularly low on sugar or salt, and we find this in animal research as well. Again, I started out with animal behavior, so unfortunately I know too much of this to refer to, but even in animals, if you are deprived of salt or sugar, guess what? Salty or sugary foods, that's what you go after. If you're not deprived of salt or sugar, they still have pleasure value. They're still able to activate regions of the brain, opioid regions, that signal pleasure. But you're also probably familiar with this concept, hunger is the best spice. There is something about needing the salt, needing the sugar, really craving the taste, that when you get it, there's a huge payoff, bigger than snacking.
Yes.
I-type curiosity for me reflects snacking. Trying new things, seeing what you like. Maybe you discover something new, maybe you don't. Vital. But to truly grow, to truly add depth, not merely breadth. I-type's all about breadth of exploration. D-type's all about depth of exploration. To do that, you need to start focusing in more narrowly. And it's a funny thing because there's another statement floating around that says ignorance is bliss. I don't know about that, but curiosity would certainly be the cure for that, wouldn't it?
Right.
So I might challenge the ignorance is bliss model by saying, well, if you don't know things, then you're stuck with whatever your belief system is. And if nothing challenges that, great. Challenge it. Learn things. Ask questions that go against what you think. Go out and challenge yourself to learn more about the world. That is also critical.
You know what? I don't know if she's one of your colleagues or not, but I'm sure the world of experts in curiosity is somewhat small. So you probably know Dr. Susan Engel.
Yes.
And she said during an interview that she would challenge us to ask ourselves, when was the last time you changed your mind about something important?
Yes. And that's an excellent question.
Yeah, I wanted to know. So on that kind of, you talked about maybe when times when curiosity may not be the best thing, but you also talked about positive psychology. So that kind of brings us to this next topic about curiosity about oneself. You've done some research on that, right? Can you tell us about that?
I think there is there's an idea of curiosity that it is purely wide-eyed wonder. And therefore pure joy. And what I am arguing is that that is a big part of curiosity that never leads to science and discovery in the way that we understand it more deeply as humans and scholars. Meaning it's really important for trying new things and meeting new people and all of the novelty type stuff. This is totally new, totally unknown to me. In fact, what we find in the lab is that I-type reactions are associated with memory states that reflect, I don't know anything about this. This is totally new to me. The reason I'm curious is based on little information I have, I anticipate this will bring me some pleasure. It'll be something worth focusing on and remembering. A funny anecdote, an interesting story about what your friends did last night. You still want that information, but any other anecdote could potentially be as enticing. Now, if it's a friend you know, and there's a whole story connected to it that you need to put a network into to figure out what's going on, where they were supposed to be, this whole plan has been disrupted, you might be thinking more deeply about it. So I would say that simple joys are critical and are tied into being open to novelty. Deeper joys, deeper fulfillment comes from understanding something deeply. That requires a bit of effort and work. The good news is that this labor of love is intrinsic, that once you stumble upon something where you've got to know the missing pieces of information, you will continue it. It'll bother you till you get it, but you'll do it. And when you get there, the payoff is greater. The reward is greater. Put another way, there is greater joy to be had in pursuing things that are complicated and require some thought than just taking the simple, this is new, this is entertaining. That's my bias.
You know, I think about this I-type and D-type in education, and I'm just curious because it seems like, you know, this D-type, I mean, take me, I mean, I can think about residency and certainly in fellowship and
I have data on medical research, by the way, you might like.
Okay. Well, this idea that, you know, you're getting, I choose internal medicine. Okay, I'm going into internal medicine. That's still broad medicine. And then I'm going to go into gastroenterology. Okay, so now I'm going into gastroenterology. Now it's quite narrowed. But along the way, it's you know, that having to know, and certainly in medicine, was not fun, because having to know meant the outcome for somebody else's life. You know, there's a lot more on the line. It was not fun, and so I can think of many nights of sheer terror of is somebody going to survive the night or not if we don't get this right. But there's also there's kind of interwoven in that experience this kind of I-type curiosity too, because new things come up, and certainly in the broader spectrum of medicine, it's like every single day there was something new coming through the door. You didn't know what was coming through the emergency room. And then you get into gastroenterology, and it's like, I know that the same thing is going to come in over and over for me, and I get pretty good at those things. So there's less of that kind of I-type. But on top of that, you know, you bring in mentors and you bring in people that teach you new things as you kind of slowly narrow your focus. There's still these really fascinating new ideas that come from all these people around you. So it's like this kind of interweaving of this kind of broad curiosity of something narrow, and then you get more narrow and it's another broad, you know.
It's a give and take. It goes back and forth.
Give and take. Yeah, it's really neat though.
Yes. In my own experiences with physicians, I like physicians who come up with novel ideas. That in itself is an expression, or at least highly correlated with expressions of I-type, to be even thinking about, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
What I also like is when a physician says, okay, I think we've gotten close to figuring out your difficult to diagnose problem. Let's run some tests. That's the kind of focus that I like as well. That kind of investigative focus reflects D-type curiosity.
Right.
Now, here's where things get tricky. Lives are on the line. People's health's at stake. It's not purely an intellectual matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the things that I think needs to be kept in mind, that curiosity does not exist entirely in isolation. I've also done research on what I call incurious information seeking. So, for example, we find that, not that this necessarily dovetails perfectly with worrying about patients, but it could, especially if you have to deliver bad news. We find that when people are curious, I don't want to use the word curious for a reason. When people want to know information about their health and well-being, and they're worried that there might be a bad outcome, it's not associated with curiosity. It's associated with worry reduction. Put another way, anxiety and worry, as it can overwhelm or interact with any approach motive. Curiosity is an approach motive. If you say to yourself, oh, that'll be fun, I'll check it out. That's going to be hard and tricky, but I've got to solve it. That's still approach. I'm really worried about what I'm going to find out. That's avoidance.
Oh, interesting.
And so what I have found is that when there's danger to yourself involved, possibly bad news, what we find is, and this is different from IND, this is quite a split. We find some people only want to know if it's trouble. Problem solvers, correlated with coping mechanisms associated with solving problems, but not related to curiosity. This is my life at stake. This isn't simply a matter of understanding things.
Right.
Then we find other groups of people, and again, these are sort of like never the tween shall meet. IND flip-flop and overlap exactly as you noted, that, very different orientations in the moment, but you go back and forth in, say, a few moments. But the other sorts of people for the incurious problem, they only want to know if the news is good. If it's bad news, they passively avoid it.
Right.
So you've got problem solvers and problem avoiders. Problem solvers, if there's no problem, let me move on with my life to something that's more interesting, engaging, and fun. Problem avoiders, you know what? If this is going to hurt me, I just as soon not know and go la, 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 la.
Yeah.
But neither were associated with curiosity.
Yeah.
So it suggests a couple things. It suggests, first of all, that simply wanting knowledge is not equal to curiosity. You can want to know how to set up your new smart TV and make sure your Roku's going to work. That's got very little inquisitiveness involved. It is purely, I have to get A and B done. Oh, here's the new taxes. Great. Here's the new tax form. Again, some inquisitiveness may arise, but there's such a utilitarian purpose to it. It's almost like you have to separate yourself from it to do it.
Yeah.
So I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that curiosity is not every reason for asking questions, but it is the primary reason for asking questions when there is no other material gain.
Yeah, that also brings, every time you share something new, it brings up a whole bunch of other questions. But let me just get to this one.
I'm
that I
open to
think
more
might-
of these.
Yeah,
We can do
great,
more of
great.
these if you guys are interested.
That would be awesome. You did say in the incurious information seeking,
Mhm.
and of course, I think about when you're trying to avoid going to the doctor, especially if you think if it's going to be something bad, versus a
Mhm.
problem solver that's like going to go and address it and move on with their lives. But do you have a comment on the incurious information seeking on the internet, as far as just seeking information to validate to strengthen your own argument, or seeking information that is only in alignment with your own point of views? Is that something that you have some thoughts on?
Oh, sure. And I wouldn't consider that incurious.
Okay.
I consider incurious literally means, why do you want to know this? And the first answer is money's at stake, health's at
Okay.
stake, my life's at stake.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you don't have time to go, if I drop dead, that'll be fun. It's
Yeah.
kind of important that things work out in a way that you're healthy and safe.
Yes.
Right.
So to be curious, that means you have to focus on the information for the sake of the information, meaning connecting the ideas, having the neuron synapse. That's what's most important.
Yeah.
In a way, that becomes subsumed under, I must protect my life.
Mhm.
And so curiosity turns out to have a very minimal role in that. It's not completely obliterated from the experience. My guess is there's enough. I mean, certainly some degree of, even in a terrible moment, we can step out of it and laugh a bit and say, well, maybe I'll make it through. Ha ha ha. How is that going to happen? That's separating yourself from the danger to think about it more abstractly meaning maybe not abstractly, but not personally.
Mhm.
And as a consequence, it becomes now information you can just think about. Doesn't involve you personally. The more it involves you personally, the more there's a problem. So I see what you're getting at, but I would argue, although this has not been empirically tested that I'm aware of, so maybe we've got some new studies to propose too.
Yes.
But a good question would be, is confirmation bias an incurious action? In other words, if I think this is right and this is wrong, I'm simply looking for information to support that. But I would argue that there is still the understanding that I have to seek that knowledge. Now, what you do when you find contrary knowledge is another question.
Mm-hmm.
You may find contrary knowledge that is threatening, and as a consequence, become incurious about that.
Mm-hmm.
This must be a lie. This information that completely contradicts what I believe, what I know to be fact, what I live my life by, no way. I shall ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, rather than ask questions like, well, wait a minute, as Susan Engel suggested, ask questions about things you don't know or don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of stuff you need to do. Be open to dissenting information. If you're not open to dissenting information, you're at least less curious than someone simply seeking confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I would argue that there is still an admix, at least, of inquisitiveness and perhaps this additional fear of what happens if I don't support it. But that's quite different than, say, for example, you've been hired to do a report for a think tank. Whatever you believe is irrelevant. You need to produce an article that supports that these think tank policies, which may defund something you believe in, actually, is going to happen. You have to write the piece. Will your research on that be guided by curiosity or incuriosity? I need to find answers. It's got to fit the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The degree to which you might even be flipping back and forth between I have a task to fulfill and I'm genuinely wondering, I'm assuming fairly negligible, because every thought that says, what does that really mean? Am I wrong? Should I challenge this? You have to suppress that because of the threat to your well-being.
Right.
So threats to well-being inhibit curiosity is one important upshot of that.
But it seems like everything is a threat to my well-being.
Oh no!
In adult life.
Let's not go there. No, just
I mean,
Well,
it's like the more you talk about it, the more
Yeah.
I'm realizing, wait, I think I'm just solving problems as I go through life. I'm not really being curious.
Mhm.
But the question, well, no, but see, if you well, it depends. If you identify, if a problem has been handed to you and you look at it and you say, I must solve this problem for a specific utilitarian motive,
Yeah.
there is a specific utilitarian purpose to this, that is the reason I'm doing it, then yes, you're not experiencing much curiosity.
Yeah.
Mm.
If, on the other hand, you're working on a project where you say, I don't know how I'm going to do this and I'm worried about it, but oh my God, I need to figure this out because it's going to be exciting to me when I do, that's D-type curiosity.
So there's an excitement involved.
Yes.
So there's an emotional piece that's a different emotional drive. Would you say?
Utterly different. The emotional drive in I-type is a sense of carefree joy.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Right.
Take it or leave it is an important idea in I-type. D-type is I can't take it or leave it. I'm not going to be able to forget about this.
Yeah.
This is going to distract me. I'm going to think about it.
But it's still a certain type of, there's still an excitement in comparison to this non-curious drive.
Oh, yes. So, okay, I'm a scientist. You're a medical doctor. We both get presented with problems we have to solve.
Yeah.
Some of these problems may lead us to go, oh, well, that's what I thought and it's solved. Great. Off my plate. Some problems, however, are, wow, that's an outcome I didn't expect.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
How can I resolve this? If that experience doesn't present excitement at the prospect of solving it, and then in the moment of solving it, the reward, the payoff, then
Yeah.
agreed. Then it's no longer become the excitement of curiosity, the challenge of solving things, or the joy of new discovery. It's now become a task.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say whatever we can do to make day-to-day tasks more engaging, or you have an opportunity to think, to question, to see something different and suggest it, to create forums whereby which people can do that in the workplace, in education, in our daily lives. Cultivating those ideas. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to pick new things that you might get excited about. That's important. I don't know if that answers your question or it gives you more questions, but
Well, more questions. Yeah, but
please ask away then.
Well, you did a good job of getting to kind of the time already zipped on by. So I want to get to and you did touch on these also throughout, as far as how an individual can work on nurturing their own curiosity, but then also to the next step of that, which you just kind of touched on right now, was how do we create an ecosystem, an environment, or a community that supports curiosity, fosters curiosity. So I guess maybe to start with, could you talk about how we can individually foster our curiosity more as adults and have maybe more of those states of wonder?
Sure. I think the number one thing is to not be afraid to ask questions.
Okay.
And I mean, I would like to think that this phrase is passé, but if anyone's ever heard the phrase, there are no stupid questions, there's a reason that phrase was invented. People are afraid to ask stupid questions.
Mm-hmm.
If that's still being uttered somewhere, then people are still worried about asking stupid questions.
Mm-hmm.
I might argue that no questions are stupid. At worst, they're a little bit silly. All questions should be asked because you know what? It's very easy for highly, highly intelligent people to have massive brain farts and just go, oh, right. That's obvious. Thank you. So ask the question. And as people who may have information to share, allow them to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
The more we create an environment that facilitates safety for being uncertain, safety for delving deep, safety for exploring broadly, the more that we foster that. And that could be an online community, that could be a public gathering, that could be simply the way in which we rephrase discourse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a method which will hopefully eventually appear in some sort of chatbot app where you can start to train people to ask better questions, to be willing to ask questions, to frame things like, is there something on your mind right now that's been driving you crazy that you haven't bothered to ask?
Mm-hmm.
To get people to think about those things.
Yeah.
We can study something so deeply that we become magnificently obsessed with it. The magnificent obsession concept, I think, is tied into D-type curiosity as well. You become a real strong fan about something. You know everything about this genre of movies or this genre of music.
Right.
This is what you know, and it matters to you. Expertise is born out of D-type curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I love the feeling of when I am magnificently obsessed. When I life is, there's no color when I'm not in that state in the world. There's no taste when I'm not in that state. It is what I'm seeking all the time, to be in that state of magnificent obsession. And I'm so glad that you have a name for it.
That's the heart of D-type curiosity. Funny story, if you ask enough people, you will find that some people will tell you they've never experienced it. Curiosity for them is always, oh, that's cool, but then they move on to something else.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And are they scientists? Are they lawyers? Are they developing projects? Or are they just trying new things all the time? That's great. That's fun. But you see what I mean?
Yes.
The pursuit, the magnificent obsessions, the pursuit, the dedicating yourself to learning something deeply. That is something everyone has the capacity for. Whether there's any monetary outcome, utilitarian value, the value is growing as a person.
Yeah.
You grow as a person the more you learn. Breadth is only half of it.
Yeah.
Depth is how you really grow.
Yeah.
That's why, as much as I feel it's important to not disregard the power of I-type, the trying new things, the novelty seeking, that's almost par for the course in human experience.
Yeah.
We encourage that almost without thinking. But I don't know that we really allow for the fact that digging in deep, not for utilitarian reasons, not to make a buck, but because this is what matters to you.
Yeah.
This is your thing.
Right.
That's important. And that is how you lead a fulfilled, purposeful, meaningful life.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask the last question, but rephrase it?
Yes, sure. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Drawing inspiration from your training people to ask better questions is instead of what is your driving question, do you have currently at this point a magnificent obsession, and can you share what that is with us?
Oh my gosh. Well, several.
Okay.
I mean, as a kid, a couple things I should say. I mean, the first answer is yes, but I'm reluctant to name every nerdy thing I like. I might, though, if given time, I would.
That might be a series.
It is a series unto itself. The many nerdy things that Dr. Litman enjoys.
Yes,
but
name.
all the weird nerdy stuff I like. But I can tell you that for me personally, one of the greatest joys I've ever experienced is figuring something out before anyone else does.
Oh.
I don't just mean a unique piece of gossip. That's fun too. I mean that you understand something about the human condition other people don't. I've, with all due modesty, I feel like I felt that way just talking with friends as a kid. That's probably how I went into psychology. But as a scientist, that's what drives me as a scientist. To know, it's like picking a little piece of knowledge out of time space and holding it in your hand. And then it's up to you to share it, to broadcast it and disseminate it with others. This valuable piece of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that other people experience that too. I think the moment someone says, hey, try this book or movie, and you're like, and you try it out and you're like, you know what? I gave it a try and now I'm into it. I want to know about the actors, the characters, who inspired it, who's the director. You go from I-type to D-type in that way.
What I love about that answer is that if we get to be in the know just by proximity to you.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Right? You get to do the work.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
Get the info.
And if I could just speak to that, I have always admired people in research. I've always been fascinated by where these ideas come from that they solve. And then because I have had to be put into the arena with them and tried to work on a project, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not my IQ level. Like I can write everything else out for you. I can do that. But how do you be at the forefront of it?
If you have 10 seconds, I can tell you.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, as you opened, Wide-Eyed Wonder, very important, would never say that being open to new things is a bad idea. Incredibly important. The D-type idea was not initially well received.
Oh.
Now it seems to be better accepted as, well, clearly there's 25 years worth of research that shows this matters quite a bit. But there has been a bias in the study of curiosity that I don't understand. The early bias was an argument. Either it's about reducing uncertainty or it's about pursuing your happiness.
Yeah.
And for some reason, for something like 50 years, it had not occurred to any of the animal behavioral folks who argued for uncertainty, or the humanistic psychometric folks who argue, and cognitive folks who argued for resolving uncertainty. It never occurred to them that maybe both are part of the process.
Yeah.
And my work, both empirically and theoretically, which is very much informed by what we know about modern social affective neuroscience, which is to say, the underlying neurotransmitters that guide desire and pleasure. And we find some evidence that the experience of desire and pleasure pharmacologically overlaps with curiosity.
Cool.
We find that those same neurotransmitters that are involved in I want food and that food is sweet is the same for I want knowledge and knowing something is sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. More work needs to be done. Hopefully I'm not overstating something, or a neuropsychologist will come on and tell me I'm mistaken at this point. But last I've checked the literature in the last few years, that's what we're finding.
Yeah.
There's a great deal of behavioral, psychometric, and cognitive work that also supports these ideas. But I can tell you that I am delighted that you began by asking about I and D type, because initially D type was a hard sell.
I want to start with the most provocative question.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll tell you why. I think it's because, like I said, there's this weird bias where kids are curious, but scientists aren't. Scientists just know stuff. Teachers just know stuff. People in the field just know stuff. It's those who have no knowledge wandering around lost who are curious. They are. But so are the people who say, I need to figure this out.
Yes.
One last quote. I was flipping through a big fan of the book Rosemary's Baby by, I think, Ira Levin. Might be getting the name of the author wrong. Great movie, worth watching. Great horror mystery kind of movie. Stephen King writes the intro for it. He talks about the worst hobgoblins in the world, the worst people in the world. You know who they are? The people who skip to the end of the book. The people who buy his books say, I'm going right to the end. I want to see how this works out. That's D-type curiosity, and it is not appreciated in the world so much. I think if I can do anything, it would be to introduce people to the concept, show them how valuable it is, show them that it's in children, it's in infants, it's in kids, it's in every person, man, woman, child of any age, who says, I need to figure this out. I'm going to keep asking questions until I know.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, that's cool, let's move on.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But that is not maybe what I think we should be putting as much emphasis on. I think we might allow, or put another way, what do I see as a good future society? And that's maybe speaking to you broadly, but in terms of curiosity, ask what you want, pursue what you want. When you find something you like, here are the resources to dig in.
Yeah.
And they are made available to you.
Yeah.
Chatbots can help with that. Again, keeping in mind the limitations of all that. Some of the programs I'm developing will hopefully help with that. A change in the cultural idea of what is knowledge and why it's important to search for knowledge, even if there's no specific utilitarian reason, there's nothing to buy, it's just learning about it because you want to learn about it. All of those ideas need to be broadcast more strongly in culture.
Fascinating.
I love it.
Fascinating.
Well, thank you, Dr. Litman. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I've greatly enjoyed it. And I've got more to talk about. So if we can do more, have me back. I'm interested.
Thank you for joining us on the L36 podcast, where the global exploration of cultural insights and stories of people making a difference big and small becomes the shift in perspective that helps us grow. Today's enlightening conversation with Dr. Jordan Litman brought us face to face with the extraordinary power of curiosity. Dr. Litman reminded us that curiosity isn't just a whimsical trait, it's a foundational driver of discovery, growth, and purpose. Whether through wide-eyed wonder or the deep pursuit of knowledge, curiosity transforms our lives, enriches our communities, and broadens our world. If this sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to explore further, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who could benefit from these insights. These dialogues are just the beginning. To dive deeper into today's insights or explore the rich landscape of wisdom, community, and transformative events we offer, visit us at l36.io. Join our global family of adventurers, storytellers, and changemakers dedicated to personal and cultural growth. Stay connected by following us on social media. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll see you soon on the L36 podcast.